Alrighty, so being able to use those websites that you can practice JavaScript on is great, but the truth is that the real code that you're going to write for yourself, you need to know how to write it in VS Code. You need to know how to write it anywhere that you want. So what we're going to do during this lesson is I'm just going to show y'all a few different ways that you can write JavaScript. And that way you can have an idea of, let's say you want to practice, let's say you want to actually create a project, you want to have an idea of how to create these tools for in real life. So let's go ahead and walk through some of the different ways. The first way I'm going to show you all to write JavaScript and just play around with it. There's a tool called REPL. In general, it stands for, what does REPL stand for? I think it's like read, evaluate, print loop or something like that. Let's see, read, eval, print loop. Yep. Don't worry too much about it. Usually REPL, it just stands for some interface of code that you can mess around with. There's a website called REPLit, spelled REPLIT.com. I'm going to go ahead and click Start Coding. Now, I'm not going to go too deep into what code is. I just want y'all to know what this tool is when I bust it open, so that way you're like, okay, he's in REPL.it right now. I don't really use this as much anymore as I used to, but it does its trick. So what you can do is you can actually choose a language. So for example, I'm going to choose Node.js because I want y'all to see JavaScript. So I'm going to create a REPL, bada boom, bada bing, I'm here, awesome. And now once I'm in here, I can write some code and test it out. I'm going to do the most basic example that anybody ever does with coding, and I'm just going to type in console.log hello. In fact, yeah, let's do that. Cool. I'm going to hit Command and Enter to run the code, and surely enough, on the right, we have hello pop up on the screen. Why? Because that's what console.log does. It logs whatever I put in here. Now, let's go ahead and break something. So I'm going to go ahead and type in console.log hello, and mazel tov, you just got your first error. It says hello is not defined. This is something we're going to talk about why that happened later, but just know you can in general run any kind of JavaScript code you want in here. So for example, I'm just going to say a equals 5. Let's console.log a plus 5. And of course we get 10. Great. Now, I don't expect you to be able to do all of this that fast. I just want to show you the different tools that you can use to actually write JavaScript code. So this one right here is called REPL. And let me go ahead. This is actually the recording from the last video, which was about resources, JavaScript resources. Sorry, that got done bouncing and I don't want to lose track of it. Cool. So let me move that over to the other screen. Kablam. All right. So this tool is called REPL. Let's talk about some other tools we can use. One of them is actually available in your browser. So inside of your browser, you can actually pull open this thing called the dev tools. So this whole window is called dev tools. It may actually pop up on the bottom for you. I personally like a vertical split. If we want to talk about that later, we can. I like this to be vertical. One of the main reasons why I like this to be vertical is because I could press escape to open up and get rid of the console. The console, as you might have guessed, is a nice little tool where I can actually just write straight JavaScript. So what's cool about the JavaScript in here is that it actually interacts with all of the HTML that I have. So for example, if I write JavaScript here, let's go ahead and try and find a tag. Don't worry, you don't have to necessarily remember any of this code. I just kind of want to show you maybe why you would use the browser console to test something out versus a terminal, right? So the nice thing about this browser is it's aware of all of this HTML. So, or anything else that might be loaded onto this web page. So if I want to test something specific to this web page, I might do it in here, but let's give it a shot. So this thing has for example, a class of Monaco status. So let's try doing document.query selector. This is a JavaScript code that allows me to find something by its class name. So we'll call it .Monaco status. And hey, look, I get this div right here. We found it. So just know that this is what's cool about this. Also, regular JavaScript works here too. So I could just do console.log hello, bam, and it does log out hello. The thing that I would just like to make y'all aware of is that I would use this tool specifically when I'm trying to test something that's happening on my page. It's just much easier to do from here than from anywhere else. The problem with this is that we can't write a script. So I do, let's say I'm say const a equals 5. I just created a variable called a and I set it equal to 5. And if I check here, a equals 5. Let's see what happens when I refresh my page though. So I just hit refresh. I'm going to check up what a equals, and it's going to say nothing because a is undefined. Oh, no, actually it throws an error. It just took a little bit to load up, but it says actually a is not defined. So that means that all of the stuff in here is just stored in memory temporarily, whereas here this script is stored permanently for you. So I typically open up REPL when I want to test out like an algorithm or something like that. And it's useful for me to store the logic that I already wrote. And if I want to test to see if like a piece of code is working, I will do it right here in the browser. Now let's talk about the real way we're going to be doing it when we actually write code, which is using VS Code. So now what I'm going to do is I am going to go ahead and open up my terminal. And we are going to, I already did it, honestly. I recorded this whole video, then accidentally showed something that I was not supposed to, so I have to re-record this whole video. So what we're going to do is we're going to make a new directory. I'm inside of my throwaway folder right now, but you could be inside of whatever directory you want. My recommendation would be, if you're struggling with this stuff, save it in a directory that you can go back to so that way you can check. And, you know, double down on stuff that you've learned. You could be like, let me go back to that thing I was able to do before. Anyways, cool. I'm going to make a directory. We're going to call it first.js proj, whatever. I don't care what you name it. And then I'm going to open that up. Bam. So I opened it up using the code command. Voila, we're here. I'm going to hit Control Command F to make that full screen. And now I'm going to use my terminal. Actually, I'm not going to use my terminal. I'm going to do it the other way. I'm going to right click inside of this browser. And I'm going to click New File. And we're just going to create an app.js. We can call this whatever we want. Doesn't matter. This is just a JavaScript file. Inside of this app.js, what I want to do is just console.log hello world. Cool. Congratulations, you've done a hello world example. How do we actually run this code and test it out, though, is the question. So remember how we selected Node.js on Replit? Well, the reason why is because there's two different types of JavaScript that you deal with typically. One of them is browser JavaScript. So browser JavaScript is actually powered by Google Chrome. Google Chrome is the thing that's figuring out what's going on. Google Chrome provides the JavaScript runtime, is how we would say that. Don't worry too much about the semantics here. Whereas here, if we want to run this, we can actually do it in the browser using that like light server tool that we use for HTML, but that's a little more complicated. The first way that we are going to learn to do it, just to do raw JavaScript stuff, is we're going to type in node, which is just the JavaScript runtime that your computer does instead of Chrome doing, or Safari, or whatever browser you're using. This is a computer-based JavaScript. It's based off of your local machine. And then just the file name. So I'm going to type in node app.js. And hey, look at that. It just says hello world for me. And that's just printing out what we got here. Let me make a change to the file and run it again, just to show you it is indeed doing what it says, what I said it's doing. It is just running this file. And that's a great way of testing what's going on. Cool. So this is how we're going to run it when we're working with raw JavaScript. The reason why we're going to work with raw JavaScript for a bit is because there's some stuff you can learn how to do directly with a website, but it's going to be hard to pick up on those skills without first just diving straight into some JavaScript stuff. So we're going to be a little bit more on the mathy side of things for the next 3 weeks. And then we're going to take it back to some of the HTML stuff. And when you have a project, hopefully we'll be able to incorporate some of this in your project. So we'll give it a shot. We'll find out what happens. All right. So anyways, we're going to go ahead and this is how we can write some code. I'm going to go ahead and just show you some more complicated code. Don't actually worry about this yet. We'll get it in later lessons. But yeah, so like, for example, you could do all sorts of complicated stuff here though. I is less than 10, I plus plus, and then maybe we want to console.log. I don't know. I'm just trying to show you that you can do fancier things. Console.log. I am logging while I equals cool. Let's go ahead and run it. Cool, and now it ran. I'm logging while I equals 0. I'm logging while I equals 1. Blah 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 blah. Nothing super fancy. I mean, it might seem super fancy to you if you haven't done a for loop yet. I promise all this stuff is going to seem scary at first, and then at a certain point you're going to be like, huh, that's not that bad, but it is going to take some time. So this is how we're going to work with JavaScript on its own. Later on, I'm going to show you how to connect JavaScript to the browser. I'm not going to make that today's issue though. One last thing I do want to show you, just so you have this is the main way I want you to be doing JavaScript, by the way. I think getting this practice for right now, where you're just running this JavaScript in Node, is going to benefit you the most. But what I was also going to say is that there is also another way you could test out some simple JavaScript. So if you just type in Node and don't provide an argument, it actually functions really similarly to this, in which case you open up an instance of Node that you have some temporary code available. So for example, I could write const a equals hello, and maybe I don't remember how this split function works. So if I do a dot split, I don't know exactly what it does. Oh, okay, it makes an array where it looks like that, but that's not what I wanted. So maybe I'll check a dot split. What does this do? Oh, nope, that's not what I wanted. Oh, that's what I wanted. I wanted to split it out by letter. Now, don't worry too much about split right now. You're going to have to learn a little bit of split to do some of these code wars problem, which is what's great about that website. I just wanted to give you an example of like mindset wise, when I would open a tool like this, it would be like when I'm not exactly sure of the specific syntax of something. And I think that if I just try out like 2 or 3 commands, I could probably figure it out faster than by Googling it. I think that that's a good use case for this. To exit this node terminal, you type in Control and C, and you have to press it again. There we go. We're out of there. That's all I got for today's lesson. That's going to be just in general. There's a few different ways you'll see me open up JavaScript. All of these are totally valid. The number one that I want you to get used to right now is this one, where you're executing a file using Node. Cool. Merry Christmas.